Chair and Ranking Member Napolitano. I'm honored to join you as a new member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Water Resources and Environmental Subcommittee. I look forward to working together to improve the work of the Army Corps, to protect the Clean Water Act, and to build upon its successes, and that we craft a robust and equitable Water Resources Development Act. I want to thank you for convening this hearing and for the people on the panel for highlighting the importance of water resources and the relevant federal agencies and the role they play in our nation's infrastructure. First question I have is for Mr. DeGood. Recent reports, and certainly we're not clear yet, but they seem to indicate that President Trump plans to propose devastating cuts to the EPA's funding and staff levels. Several of its most important programs may face elimination altogether. Your testimony and the written testimony highlighted the importance, the enormous importance of the EPA to communities across the country, from protecting clean water infrastructure to safeguarding public health. What do you think that these cuts that we've been at least hearing about to EPA would mean for the federal government's efforts to maintain and improve clean water infrastructure?
So I think I would make 3 points to that question. One, we've had a lot of talk already this morning about frustrations that people have, I think often legitimate, with the length of permitting processes. I think when you're talking about potentially a 30% or greater cut to EPA's budget, you're talking about eliminating many of the positions, many of the people whose job it is to try to review these applications and to provide timely determinations. So if our goal here is to give people greater certainty and to speed those processes up, I don't see how cutting federal staff and federal budgets are going to do that. But I think more importantly, we really undermine our long-term productivity and long-term community health. As just one example, the Section 106 grants program provides money directly to states to allow them to do the very implementation work of things like the Clean Water Act, right? This is monitoring, assessing water qualities, developing water quality standards, determining total maximum daily loads, ensuring compliance, taking enforcement actions. This is really the core of laws like the Clean Water Act. We hand off to states to do that work, and when we take money away through EPA budget cuts, we take away their ability to enforce those laws. And the last thing I'll note is about the brownfields program. These are very productive dollars, and it comes down to a question of efficiency, and it comes down to linear infrastructure. If you allow a parcel that has been polluted over time through a prior industrial use to sit idle, and you go out and you have to build new infrastructure, that's water, that's sewer, that's roads, stoplights, all the things that go along with that to try to attract new housing or new commercial development, you're creating additional facilities that you're going to have to try to maintain for decades into the future. When we remediate parcels that have existing pollution, what we're really doing is creating a pathway for future economic development at that site that will generate tax revenue on top of existing infrastructure. It's not something we have to go out and build new. So we're really cutting off our nose to spite our face when we talk about zeroing out the brownfields program.
Thank you. Next question, I want to clarify something that I'm not really clear on. Mr. Kernian, you brought up the issue of funding for federal water agencies, and we have heard already of the backlog the Army Corps has for authorized but unconstructed projects, where the valuing is estimated at over $56 billion. Now, you talked about in your written testimony, especially that environmental review processes have played a major role in some of the backlog or holding up the process. But we also heard from the opening statement from Ranking Member DeFazio that the Corps budget cannot deal with the backlog. It's not only, or it's not really the burdensome regulations that are leading to the backlog, but the lack of funding for the Army Corps. Could you kind of deal with this relationship and where you see this relationship between the funding and also the regulations?
Personally, I've seen both. And I'm just speaking offhand. I've worked for as a contractor for the Corps of Engineers now for over 30 years, and I've seen quite a bit of the both take place in waiting on funding. I've seen projects shut down because They didn't have funding, where they've actually gone to contractors and said, look, in order to keep going, you have to finance your project or stop and take the brunt of it until we get more money appropriated for the project. I've also seen the environmental things, which I alluded to when I spoke about before. One of the biggest things that I've seen personally is wetlands issues. Now, maybe EPA issues in other states. Of course, where we are, it just seems like it's more wetlands. Congressman here talked about diverting water. Every time you divert water, it's not opening up another waterway, but is that water going to go to an area that's now going to become a wetlands, and it's not dryland, it's now drylands, but you run water through it, it might be wet, and then you can't use the land again. So I've seen actually both of them. I don't know if I'm answering your question right, but that's my personal experience with it.
Thank you, and I yield back.